Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Freeman Files here on the J Free 906 podcast channel on YouTube. And we have a very exciting night for you. I've been, ever since this all came together, very short notice, based on the last couple of episodes on the Curse of Oak Island, and was talking with Corjan Mol, and he has said, hey, if you want me to come on and help to explain a little bit more about the Knights of Malta and the family ties, I would love to come on. And I thought, oh my gosh, yes, we'd love to have you come on. So without further ado, please welcome author, researcher, Mr. Corjan Mol. Corjan, how you doing, sir?
I'm good. Thanks, man. How are you?
Oh, man, I'm fantastic. And even better now with the opportunity to have you on. If those of you in the audience don't know already, he is a very good author. Christopher Morford and Corjan put this book here together called it's all worn up. I know it's like, because I've been in it so many times, the Jerusalem Files. Awesome book. And this is still available on Amazon, I'm assuming, Corjan?
Yeah.
Okay.
You do get it without the sticky notes, though.
Yeah. No, I know. I'm like Tom Burns in that respect. Because I have the little notes in there, so I can go back and refer to certain things. And oh yeah, this is a fantastic book. It really truly is. And I'm so happy that you had it narrated as well, because when I first started listening to it or I started reading it, and then the audiobook came out. I grabbed the audiobook and I started over. I went back to the beginning and went through the entire thing with the guy, very good narrator too, by the way. But I went through the audiobook portion of it. So I have 2 copies of the book and the audiobook version. So awesome, though. It really, really is good.
Thank you.
Okay, so you've been on, you've been kind of like the overseas correspondent or researcher for the folks at the Curse of Oak Island, the team for Rick and everybody and Judy. And, it's amazing. The thing that I was always thinking about was the different people involved in this, what they've been talking about, the multi-generational use of Oak Island. The Knights Templar, the Vikings, the Portuguese, and going down the list, and Phipps and Belcher and the stuff from the Concepcion and all this. There's been so many players in all of this. I never even thought about the Knights of Malta. And now, after watching a little piece of Judy's presentation that she had, and I know there was more to it on the show than what more to it than what we saw on the show, I should say. And then your presentation with the family ties, I'm like, this is incredible information. Where I don't know where to start with this, quite honestly, but how did all this research come to be? I mean, how did it begin?
Oh, what a question.
Sorry about that.
No, I sometimes feel that, there's no beginning and no end to this whole thing.
Yeah.
Which is also the charm of it, I guess. But in that sense, Oak Island is still reality TV. I mean, it happened sort of the way you saw it. It started with the John Edwards books, and with the reference to Malta. Let's have a look. Emiliano and myself went on a scouting trip there. So, is there any connective tissue? Is there anything to see, to do there, that we could link back to the island? And I didn't have high hopes. It's well, in a European sense, it's not old. I mean, the Knights of Malta landed there in 1530. Before that, there weren't any Templars. Perhaps there was a shipwreck of a Templar ship, and there's a story that 1 or 2 have been buried on Gozo.
Oh, wow.
Really cool site. But there's no real, early medieval history on the island that I could tie to the wider mystery, even if I wanted to. But there was interesting stuff, all right. And of course, if you look at the Knights of Malta, previously, the Order of the Hospital of St. John of Jerusalem. I mean, that's a very old organization, and when you're there, when you talk to them, when you do your research, it becomes so apparent that this is an organization that was founded in the Crusader area or in the Crusader era, and that is still there, which has an unbroken line of grandmasters from the 1100s to today, including many, if not most, of the archives they had. Even if they had to flee, they in most cases they were allowed to take everything with them. That is immensely powerful, and to have been given a glimpse in there is breathtaking, and insights then start to develop. And as I always say, you need to go to a place to feel it out, to talk to the local people, so you can tune into the historical context, and get the right perception of the facts on the ground. And at some stage, then this whole Villier started to dissolve, out of the mist. I mean, I've been looking at Gerard de Villiers ever since I started looking at the mystery of Rennes Chateau in the late 1990s. I was always fascinated by, someone of who someone else testified that he had fled Paris with a treasure, and never, nothing was ever heard from the man again. And then even for the Jerusalem files, Chris and I went very, very deep. I couldn't find much about Gerard de Villiers. Well, we found the Ruat story that we also that I also told to the Oak Island team. You saw that on television, I think. But at some stage, the trail ends. So we concentrated a little bit more on Philippe de Villiers, who was the Grand Master of the Hospitallers, on Philippe de Villiers in the 15th century, who fought at Poitiers with John II of France, and who was captured. They came to England. There was some, menorah symbology around that, so we thought that was really interesting for the book. So we had touched on different members of the Villiers family, but I honestly I'd never lined them up and never realized, hey, we're looking at one family. And then if you're starting to look a bit closer, I think during the writing of the Jerusalem files, I mean, my secret weapon is my timeline. So ever since I started researching Rennes Chateau in the 1990s, I built a timeline. So I have a tool with an incredibly detailed timeline. So if someone says to me, 1615 or 1531, I can go to my timeline and know exactly who was king, who was pope, in what country, what was going on, what were the events, what were the birthdays of the saints, what was going on. And then, at some stage, stuff started to click together. It's an organic process. It's hard to touch. It's hard to to assess, and it's also a group process. So we have I'm not on my own. There's an Oak Island research team. There's more people in there, and we interact and we sound off on each other. And someone will give you an idea, and you carry it further, and then the next will carry it even further. And in my mind, not only in research, but also in my business life, and you need other people to achieve greatness in everything. No one will solve this on his own. If we all sit on our research, then in the end, nobody will know the answer. And we've been, and I think I think maybe with a few exceptions, but every researcher into the mystery of Oak Island is looking at the same thing from a slightly different angle.
Right. Yep. Yeah. And I've kind of said that before too, is that, it seems like so many of all you researchers working on this have bits and pieces of these stories that fit together. And I know I said a long time ago, I know when John Edwards was co-hosting with me back, and we talked about It Takes a Village, and the fact that if all of the researchers were calling, everybody would just get together in a big room and just hash all this out, the mystery might have been solved years ago. But I understand that that's difficult at times, um but that's the case. It's funny that you mentioned the Pope, and I will take this one little deviation away from the storyline just for a moment,
Yeah.
because there has been a new Pope has been. Uh, I don't know what you would. I know they had the conclave and they picked a Pope. I don't know what you call it when they put him in position. But anyway, there is a new Pope, and that Pope happens to be this man right here.
He's elected. He was voted for, and he's elected.
Elected. Okay, elected as the Pope.
Yeah.
And you know something about this man that you found out just today, right?
Well, it's not me. This was on
It was on social
Knights of
media.
Malta Facebook forum. Our new Pope is a Knight of Malta.
He's a Knight of Malta. Wow, how coincidental is all that, right? Oh my goodness. Well, we're very happy, and we hope that he is a Pope for a long, long time, and I know he'll do a great job, because that's how they go through. And I'm not a Catholic, but I know that there is quite the process to pick the new Pope, and so hopefully he'll do a great job. I'm sure he will, and be around for a long, long time. But anyway, that little deviation, I know you told me that earlier. I was like, what? He's a Knight of Malta.
It's one of those nudges that the universe sometimes gives to you. Yeah.
How coincidental is that? And there's no such thing as a coincidence in my eyes. So, so back to this whole time, the family. You were breaking this down for us a little bit in your presentation that you did when you were in was it Citadella?
This was in Mdina, which is the old capital of Malta, which is indeed a citadel. So it's a fortified medieval town. It's used in countless films, and I think it's one of the best preserved medieval towns that we have in Europe. And it's crazy. And we were there, literally in the kitchen of Philippe de Villiers, sitting at the kitchen table. I don't think the folding chairs were original, but for the rest, it was the same thing. I think this was one of very few off-island war rooms. So it was cool.
Yeah, I saw you put out a little piece in your social media and Facebook, and so we put that in our Facebook group earlier today. I think it was today, it might have been yesterday, but we got the chance to look at that, and you talked about doing this presentation there. And I know that you're a guy who's been on TV many times. I know you've been in on stage, all the different things that you do. And you said you made a comment in there. You were actually a little bit nervous for this one. I can't imagine.
Yeah. I was. I mean, the
because
weight
of the material, or
no, it's the material and the weight of the place. Philippe de Villiers was the greatest commander of his age. I mean, he led the Hospitallers during the siege of Rhodes. So he had like 600 knights and maybe 6,000 men, mercenaries, and he withstood an army of between 100 and 200,000 Turks with 400 ships for 6 months. So this man was larger than life. Doesn't even cut it, right? I mean, this was a legend even in his own time. About whom I've read a lot. And in the Jerusalem Files, the book that I wrote with Chris, that you just showed, I mean, there's a large section that deals with Iladam, the estate where he originated from, and which was central to their family. I mean, that place happens to play a very big role in the Jerusalem Files. So to be, in his house in Medina on Malta, was one thing, and then the other thing is, to me, this is consequential. This is a consequential conclusion. So the realization that the Knights Templar, the Knights Hospitaller, but also the Knights of the Star, who just only existed for a few years, were basically led by the same family, by uncles, brothers, grandsons of the same bloodline. That means that the distinction between the orders sort of vaporizes. And we've all read in this genre about secret societies and keeping secrets and swearing your oath and doing your rituals, but there's no bond stronger than blood. We all, I think we're all fighting in our families sometimes, but when it comes down to it, the people you can really trust, with the stuff that is dearest to you, is your family.
Yep.
And that is such a mundane and such a obvious conclusion, and I can beat myself senseless that I didn't see that earlier. And then all of a sudden, things become a lot more logical, and perhaps they were. Don't want to sound too conspirational. What's the word here? But yeah, maybe they were working on the same theme, or thinking along the same lines, or working on the same problem, and they act in similar ways in similar situations. So they're under siege, they flee, they take their possessions with them, they take their archives with them, and this pattern repeats and repeats and repeats, like patterns repeat in families. So it's the weight of that conclusion. Hey, there's and even apart from Oak Island, I think the knowing that there was one family having a more than average impact on these orders is for me that I can write 4 books about that.
Wow.
Even without North America or Oak Island, and then to be in man's kitchen. So, I mean, I can just ramble on forever here.
I appreciate that, and I like that, and that's what this. A lot of times when I have guys like you on the show, I like researchers like you, I should say, on the show. I love to just let you go, and I don't want to interrupt too much because the information that comes out is so great. But that was the thing that really got me, is when you were giving the presentation and talking about the family line and how it has stayed. We often look at the talk about this, watching The Curse of Oak Island and doing our reviews of each episode. We've often talked, Tom and I and Seth, and that we talk about how this information could have been passed down along these different groups that were involved, and we saw very, very likely passing of information. Now when you put into a family involved in that, and as you said, that's where secrets are going to be passed along. That kind of, in my brain, that kind of solidifies this passing of information, that they would have known about a place in North America long ago. So when they needed to, and I know this is, you had mentioned this on the show too, that when they left in 1307 and they got out of there, whether they went to whether they went to Portugal, or whether they went up to Scotland, we don't know for sure, right? That's still kind of up in the air as to where they went. Some researchers say they went here, others say they went here, but knowing that they could escape all of that and come to a new place that they would have already known about, that and now with the family involved in this, and then with Isaac coming over to set up Acadia, I mean, that puts it all together in my brain. I mean, tell me if I'm wrong, but I can't imagine not passing that information along of a place to go.
That is something, huh? That is something.
So yeah. So and I know I interrupted you there, but please continue. I jumped in the middle of that, but with that thought, but Was
No, I think I had sort of reached my conclusion there. So, monumental realization. There was one family running these two orders. Two, I was in the man's kitchen, telling my story, to some of my best friends. I think I saw Judy on the chat there.
yeah,
Oh man, she was there, and we did it. This was such a special day. I can't even begin to tell you. So also, the bonding that took place there, and it's so powerful to share research like this, and then to live through the conclusions, and feel deep in your bones what sort of a what a historic moment this was. Yeah, it was amazing. So it at least for me, and I don't want to make it too pompous and too dramatic, but for me, this, as I said, this was consequential. This has forever changed the way I look at this mystery. And as you know, war rooms last a long time. I think this was like 2 hours and a half, 3 hours, and we take our time. A lot more was said than you saw on the show. And what you see is heavily edited. So that I hope I can share some more stuff after the season. But I can tell you that we also found physical proof inside Philippe de Villier's house,
oh wow,
and stuff that we are 100% certain of, that it's from his day and age, that we can link directly to the rest of the research that we've been doing over the last 4 or 5 years, which was another head scratcher.
yeah,
So in that sense, Malta has been very good to us. I mean, so ever so grateful to to everybody who's helped us there. Yeah, amazing.
yeah. No, we saw the when the talking about the button. I know when Judy was giving her presentation, and yes, I talking with many of the researchers who have presented in the war room. We know that you're in there for a couple hours, and we get about 5 minutes of it is all we get on the show.
If you're
Um,
lucky.
yeah, if we're lucky, exactly, and that's why I love having this opportunity to have you guys come on and share that here, because now I understand NDAs. We understand that you can't really get and just explain everything that you'd love to, because it may still air, and we just don't know that, unfortunately, and then it may not. But when Judy was given her presentation and she was talking about the button that was found on lot 5 with the swirls on it, and then talking about the button that she found on the painting of a uniform, a collar button that had the same swirls. That I was when I saw that, I was like, "Oh my gosh, this is definitely a tie here." Obviously, went over to Malta and spoke with I forget which gentleman that was there looking at that. I've forgotten. Dennis, I think his name was. His first name was
Yeah,
Dennis.
and it's, yeah,
And he showed one, but it was a little different. The swirls were actually going the opposite direction. Um, but I looked at that for what Judy showed, with that collar button, and that's a pretty close tie with that button that was found on lot 5. So, is it possible if Isaac Deriz, you pronounce it differently than they say it on the show, and I his last name Deriz Isaac. I'm going to just say Isaac.
in,
When
in
he
French, in French it would be the Razi.
okay, I'm never.
In English, it's something like the Rosili or something like that.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And knowing that he came over to set up, Acadia, and then, or important part of that, and then he was just, a few miles south in Le Havre, the Le Havre River, setting that up. Is it possible that him or some of his people were on Oak Island? I mean, that button. I mean, we can't say for sure. I don't think we ever could say for sure unless we have more proof of that. But boy, that's pretty compelling, isn't it? I mean,
Well, I try not to look at single artifacts,
yep,
and
right.
I'm not a an antiquarian, or I have very little knowledge of artifacts or coins or that sort of stuff. But I try to look at groupings. So then, if you look at the island, there's like, I mean, this has been on TV a million times. I mean, there's like sort of grouping of dates around, you know, the 1300s, 1200s. Then there's like the 1600s, and then there's the after 1700s.
Right.
And if you then map that on the let's say, you know, on the life cycle of the Knights Templar or the Hospitallers or other groups, then you know you can distract useful information sometimes. And then, you know, one thing is never evidence, but if it's 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 things together, that forms a certain pattern, and then you can make a hypothesis. I don't like the word theorist. I mean, they call us theorists. I think what we do is hypothesize. So, I mean, we take the facts that are there, and then, you know, to try to come up with a story that connects all the dots and is still somewhat believable, plausible, etc. Yeah. So, in that sense, I mean, I've been trying to, in terms of research, go to walk a number of different paths. So a family line is one. Information being transferred is another one. And I've said this before. The Vikings didn't need to help the Knights Templar. A lot of Templar families originated in Normandy and descended directly from Rollo and his lieutenants who arrived there. Was in the 10th century, tried to conquer Paris, and in the end, you know, they ended up being given the country of what is today Normandy. Mind you, the Villier family originally came from Normandy. This was this was a Norman family, which makes it even more cool.
More information. I had no idea. Go ahead.
Yeah, so that's family information being transferred. But the other thing is the physical angle. So did people indeed transfer relics? Did they travel with valuable goods? You know, how did they do that? I think I've sent you two images of that. So I've been trying to compile, you know, how did
with
people,
the dates?
Yeah.
Okay.
If you can bring that up. Yeah, so this is just a few examples. So in 597, so this is in the 6th century, right? The relics of St. Andrew were shipped from Greece to Scotland. So they went all over the Mediterranean, North Sea. The body of St. Mark, you know, was smuggled out of Alexandria, shipped to Venice. Then this is a very cool one. The relics of St. Lucius were smuggled to Roskilde in Denmark in the 12th century. I mean, which is, you know, on the edge of the Viking Age. The Holy Blood of Bruges. So this is a vial, you know, a glass tube of blood, of which they firmly believed, you know, it was the blood of Christ. And they put it on a ship and sailed to Bruges with it. The crown of thorns. I mean, there's a lot of examples. I think you have another one with some more dates that I've attributed to the Templars and to the Hospitallers. So here in blue is the Knights Templar, and in green is the Knights Hospitaller. So again, the blood of Christ was brought from Jerusalem to Norwich in England in 1274. King Louis IX of France had a stash of relics in his ship when he returned home after the failed Seventh Crusade in 1254.
Right.
And in 1294, the Knights Templar transported a full house from Palestine to Italy through Croatia, which is now known as the Holy House of Loreto. This is by now archaeologically confirmed. These are 3 walls of a 1st century Palestine house, a full house. Philippe de Villiers carried the Madonna della Carbonara. It's not a pasta dish, but an icon, an effigy of the Madonna that they attributed great value to, which also includes a four-dot cross, by the way, but also the right hand of John the Baptist. The point being from these these two overviews is that the people in these orders would travel with their most valued possessions overseas, over huge distances, and that was not a single incident. This was a pattern.
And you would think about they'd be worried about that. How often have we heard about ships that didn't make it from one place to another, but yet here they felt safe doing it, right? So
yeah, and there's two things to this. People always we look at this with a 21st century mindset. So we think, oh, these poor people in these bad boats. I mean, they would sink, so they would never go in the ocean. I mean, when we were in Portugal filming for season 9, I think, we talked to a Portuguese admiral who runs the Maritime Museum in Lisbon. And I asked him the question. So weren't people afraid to step on a caravel and then sail into oblivion? And he said, no. I mean, on a boat there was a fixed command structure. You would know what to do. There would be food. People would take care of you. If you would walk out of the gate of town, there was a very big chance you would be robbed or stabbed to death. On a boat, you knew every day what was going to happen. And if you would go down, that would be, God's will, and there wasn't anything you could do. And especially if you had, sacred treasures with you, people were assuming they would be under divine protection, right? So they thought little of that. They didn't have the luxury of being able to be scared. They just did these things.
Yeah. And that's really, and yet, where are they now? That's the big question. These relics, as they pass their way along, and you guys, described some of that very well in this book, the Jerusalem Files. They made their way along, but then all of a sudden, after 1307, they disappear, and we're wondering to this day, exactly where they went. Now, you guys have a very good description of at least the menorah and where it may have ended up. But these other relics, if they were being protected and they talk about the treasure also. The treasure just all of a sudden it's just gone. They had a lot of treasure, the Knights Templar did. And putting this all together, there was somebody, I want to go back to it too. At some point, there was somebody asked the question about putting that all together with the family. I forgot. Linda had it up there for a moment. Linda, if you could bring that back when you get a chance. We didn't get it was someone was asking about the Jerusalem. Yes, that one there. But taking these relics and moving them along to a safe place, and then even though they knew where they were, or it's documented how they went, and you guys did very well with that in the book, and then boom, disappeared completely and fall off the radar. So trying to solve that mystery has been the one. Go ahead. I'm sorry, Linda, if you could put that back up there real quick. I wanted to touch on that, or let Corjan touch on that for a moment. I know now you got to go find it again. Sorry.
What was the question?
It was said, are there family ties between the groups, the Templars, Cisterns, and in the Hospitallers? I know you were kind of touching on that already. Go ahead.
There were definitely family ties between the Templars and the Hospitallers. A direct bloodline is it often goes, via brothers, because someone like Philip de Villiers lived the celibate, so he didn't have a wife, he didn't have any kids. I mean, these were very pious people, and they still are today. Even though today they're usually married and have kids, but at the time, many of these guys didn't. So the bloodline would go, left, right, brother, sister, that sort of thing. And the same for Cistercians. I'm sure there were Cistercians connected to Templar and Hospitaller families. But if it was a true Cistercian, the bloodline would end there because they weren't allowed to have any kids.
Right. Yep.
Yeah.
So thank you for answering that. Yeah, because I know that we get a lot of questions from folks, and feel free to jump in there. We'll do our best with those questions if you have them as we go along. But um, okay, so with this family now, and I don't know if we're at this point, but you had some other slides here also that you wanted to share. I saw that Judy had commented on the dates, and I think we covered. Is that the dates that we covered here on the two slides already?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
I'm not sure what you wanted to show.
Let's see. You had there was some books that you had that you had a
Oh yeah.
picture in one of the slide, or this was what you had shared on social media, and
Oh yeah. Yeah.
yeah. So uh, tell us a little bit about some of these books here. And this was in Malta where you saw these. Was that where these were?
Yeah, this is in the Palazzo Falson. So this is in the library of the house. And I thought this was mighty cool. This is the history of the Chevalier Hospitalier, so the Knights Hospitaller. And this is documented by l'Abbé Vertot, which was a church father who did a lot of research and made the first official, all-encompassing history of the Knights of Malta, year by year, and it's a treasure trove. It's an incredibly good source of information. It has something about everyone who ever meant anything in the order, and to see that in Philippe de Villier's house, yeah, was awesome.
Oh, there you go. Gee, the dates are like they landed at La Have on a date that corresponded with something important in the history of the Catholic Church.
Yeah,
Interesting.
yeah, yeah. And since it's Judy, I'm sure we can share this. There were dates. How do I put this without giving everything away?
Yep. Be
If you
careful.
look at the important days, the dates they landed in Nova Scotia, but also did all sorts of other stuff, you will see a pattern. And these dates correspond with events that were meaningful for the Knights of St. John.
Oh wow. Okay. So I after the season is over,
Yeah.
love to have you come
So
on and delve
if
into that.
you want to know if there's meaning, if there's a more than practical, a spiritual, a bigger plan sort of meaning behind something that the order does, look at the date on which it happens.
Very good. Yep. Are
So
you
there's
were you
more,
oh,
and again, this is something you will not read in a book. You will need to talk to the to the order, and then at some stage you will get these sort of nuggets of information. Also, there was more activity in the Americas than has been officially documented.
really?
Uh,
Wow.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Interesting. Are you allowed to
Not,
look at those?
not all the information is in the public domain.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And I love that part when on the show when you had said they're still around. Let's just ask them.
Yeah,
Yeah, that was a great line. I'm like, wow, they're still around. Yeah,
yeah,
definitely. Just go ask them. And when you have those little personal conversations with people, as you
yeah.
just said, you're going to find out more details that are not in the public domain. Exactly. Yep.
And and it's not a joke. I mean, these are real people that still live this pious lifestyle, that still have these, the set of values that they had 400 or 500 years ago. And once you get through the second, third layer, and you start to feel that, well, it's something. I mean, that is, these are very committed people.
Right. Were
Yeah.
you allowed to look at those books that are up there on the shelf there that we just showed? Were you actually allowed to take one down and look at them, or are they kept, no?
No, I wasn't.
Oh man.
I wasn't, yeah. But I know I have copies at home.
Oh, do
But
you? Okay, all right.
yeah, I do. You know, this is my go-to source for information on the Knights of St. John. But this is an original set, so it's priceless. I would love to have it.
Yeah, and you never know, there may be notes or little things written in, some of the
Yeah,
pages that might be
yeah. Who knows? Who knows? Yeah.
wouldn't that be really cool? Yeah. Let's see, you had a few other things, anything else you wanna share with us, feel free to jump in on that. Let's see, you had the, Palazzo Falson, who tell us a little bit about there was a, um
Well, the Palazzo Falson. So when Philip de Villiers, Grand Master of the Order of the Hospital of Saint John of Jerusalem, is expelled from Rhodes. So as I said, you know, so he withstood the Turks for like 6 months, and the Sultan was, you know, so impressed that he gave them free passage. So they left Rhodes, and they sort of started to travel the Mediterranean. So they were in Rome, in Genoa, Viterbo, in Nice, in other places, until eventually the emperor granted them the Isle of Malta for the price of one Maltese falcon, the price of a falcon, the Maltese falcon. And so he arrived there with his retinue on, I think, in 1530, on one of those dates. And he entered the city of Mdina, which was the capital, the big citadel, and he chose the Palazzo Falson, which was called the Norman House at the time, believe it or not, as his temporary headquarters. So there was a sort of a chapter room, meeting room installed. There was kitchens, amenities, and the other thing is that there's another house of Philip de Villiers on Malta, is in the fortress of Saint Angelo in Birgu, close to Valletta, the capital city on the main island, where one of the original features of his house still is his garden. So he built places where there was, shade, where he could think, and that look still today incredible, serene, and comfortable. And the Palazzo Falson has the same vibe. That was so powerful, to know that, this man's been walking around here, he's been sitting here, pondering his next step. And apart from that, it's just a beautiful medieval building. It's very well preserved. And it has a fantastic collection. I mean, the first time Emiliano and myself went in, we noticed that there's 4 Poussins painted by Nicolas
Oh,
Poussin
really?
hanging on,
Yeah.
on the wall.
You know a lot
Which
about that, man.
yeah, so the last owner was an avid a Knight of St. John, and also an avid art collector. And boy, did he have a collection, and that's all still in the house. Yeah, it's an amazing place. If
I
you're
tell
ever on the Isle of Malta, go to the Palazzo Falson. It's the best museum on the island.
I tell you, that is one of the things about being a field researcher, as you are, traveling around to these places. I mean, we get to see the pictures. I've never been over to Europe, but just looking at some of these pictures of the places you've gone, and you went into those tunnels down below, and Judy too. And it was like, wow, all you guys are getting to go down there. I'm so jealous about that, but yet at the same token, it's like that is really, really cool to be able to see this firsthand. We get
Well,
bits and
what this
pieces.
tells you, you're making a good point, Jeff. What this tells you is that, and we already knew this from the Templars, and I've been hammering this point home for a long time. These people were skilled engineers. They knew everything about water, about stone, about sand, about clay. And I think the way the show presents it, it's a bit of a stretch, comparing a 16th century limestone tunnel to the money pit of which
Yes.
we're not even certain where it is. That is a really, really big leap. But fact is, that I think Valletta, the capital of Malta, was basically a designed city from the ground up, a bit like Washington D.C. So there was a ground plan above ground and a ground plan underground, which were built at the same time. And the scale, I mean, you can't, you can hardly capture this on television. The scale is just huge. It's huge, and it's not like they've dug some sloppy tunnel. You know, you have these huge ornaments. It's like watching Lord of the Rings, right? I mean, they have these huge ornaments. Yeah, this one. And what they don't tell you is that the co-cathedral of St. John is actually standing on top of this.
Oh, really? Oh, wow.
Yeah, so it's not like it's not carrying any weight, right? I mean, it's, so and the top layer. I mean, you can see the sewer entry in the ceiling. So the top layer is only like this big. It's a miracle of ingenuity and engineering.
Yep.
So if anything, they were skilled engineers,
Right.
and digging a hole somewhere would definitely not have scared them. Not in the Middle Ages, not in the 16th century, and not in the 19th.
Yeah, exactly. And that's something that, we talk about that, you look at where we kind of speculated on this a little bit last night when we were doing our review of the 2 episodes concerning the Knights of Malta. And, we see them working stone and making their way through, chipping away at stone on the inside, first the rough cut and then the smooth stuff later.
Yeah.
But, when you look at like the whole thing with Oak Island, they're going to have to go through a lot of dirt to be able to get down to where the stone is. And that's something that you wonder, okay, did they get down that deep? We got upcoming episode of them getting the case on, going down over 200 feet in the ground. Hopefully they're getting down to an area where I think they might actually have been getting down into the bedrock, because that's where they were, doing. They're more precise in doing that kind of work, I guess, is the point I was
So
trying to make.
they dug into everything, including bedrock. Like Judy said there, I mean, it's more like tunnels than streets. It's straight as an arrow. You can't believe it. And there's an interesting question from Kat here. Did they carve the blocks to create the under? I mean, this is always the first question of Rick Lagina. Where did they put the material? Where did it go?
Yeah.
And the answer is yes. They took the stone from underground and brought it above ground to build their buildings with.
That's a great. That's interesting.
Yeah, the thing is, stone is one of the only raw materials that Malta has. It's a barren island. There's nothing.
Yeah, from the pictures that we saw, it kind of looked that way. I was going to ask you about that, so I'm glad you offered that up.
It's Vegas. It's a desert full of houses.
Oh wow, yeah. One of the arches you guys are, when you entered into one of the buildings, and I was trying to find the picture I had for it, but you were going into this building, and there was on the archway above there was an eye, a definite eye.
Oh, right. Yeah, that was the fortress of St. Elmo.
Okay, so do you have any idea what that eye? We talk about the all-seeing eye. It was on our dollar bill. The Masons use that. People have referenced that as the triangle in the eye in the swamp. I mean, do you know what the significance of that particular eye was or is?
We don't know. We asked because it's a very prominent feature. But it's part of the original works, and there it is. And no idea. Wow. Maybe to the Ottomans that laid siege to the fortress. Hey, we have our eye on you. I don't know.
Yeah, and there was another one, you guys, and that was interesting that Judy just brought that up. It was bombed like crazy in World War II. They have beautifully rebuilt these old buildings. That's sad that happened. Making that sort of destruction. I hate to see any kind of places like this be destroyed in that way. Same thing with shooting somebody. I guess the Germans shot the nose of the Sphinx with a tank. Just shot it for the heck of it. But Come on, that's don't damage this stuff. We need this stuff preserved for integrity. So, and then there was another one here. You can see the obvious work that they've done to replace. For whatever reason, there was the archway there, and then they've done some work here as you guys were walking into it.
Yeah.
Where was this again? Was this on Gozo?
This is on Gozo. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So again, but you see, like you mentioned earlier, the stone, and I didn't think about that, where they were getting the stone, but they got the stone from underneath as they were making the tunnels and then brought it up to build the buildings.
Yeah, that's how they did it.
That's incredible. I never even thought about that. That makes total sense. Wow.
Yeah, and the thing was, I mean, we did a little experiment there because the stone looks like a bit like limestone, looks very easy to scratch. It isn't. It's hard to scratch the stone. So which indicates that if people want to put something in there, they would have to have a very good reason, because it would take a lot of effort to scratch something into that stone. So for me, in the end, Malta was the place where we connected a lot of the dots and came to the realization that the Villier family played a role in the Order of St. John, in the Knights Templar, the Order of the Star, sometimes all at the same time, and that indeed, the Knights of Malta landed in La Have in 1632. And there is connective tissue because Isaac's mom was Catherine de Villiers, who was the daughter of a bloodline that came from a brother of Philip de Villiers.
Yep.
So that's quite a direct bloodline. All in all, the Villiers family produced, I think, 31 Knights of St. John, 11 Templars, 2 Knights of the Star. But apart from that, there's an endless list of dignitaries. And in the UK, they were even more successful. I mean, they split off to an English branch very early on, I think in 1095 or 59, around that sort of time, which became the line of George Villiers. Perhaps once, the secret lover of King Charles, the Duke of Buckingham, who produced a bloodline that provided ancestors for a dozen English prime ministers, for Lady Di, and by marriage for George Washington. Yeah, but the thing is, of course, if families get bigger, they dilute.
Yes.
If you look for the place Villiers in France, I think you'll find 100 of them. Wow. It's not a unique name, so I've taken very, very great care to make sure that I have the right Villiers, that the documentation's there, that there's an established family connection, from multiple sources, to make sure that that the case is as strong as possible. So Malta, in the end, brought that all together, which made it a very worthwhile trip for me, together with the fact that we found physical evidence again in Philip de Villiers' house that ties to our mystery, which for some reason I can't comprehend wasn't in the episode and might still be aired. I don't know.
Maybe they will, maybe they won't. There's only 2 more. I think there's 2 more episodes to go. Yeah. So chances are there won't be, but if you can ever have an opportunity to come back,
you never know, but usually they don't go back to the location. I mean, I don't edit the show, so I don't know.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I know. I did want to ask real quick about the 4-dot cross that we've seen pretty much everywhere. The one that they were showing on the episode, whoever did the work here to color it red for the show, they missed some of it. This is actually, when I got looking at it closer, it's actually an 8-dot cross. The 4 on the outside, this one here is not painted, and they painted this one in the middle for whatever reason. But then there's 4 inside here as well. And I think Doug had made the comment, there was 2 people that said this, but Doug had made the comment about that this 4-dot cross would often or could be a sign that relics kept here, religious relics or important relics kept here. what's your take on the four-dot cross? Can I, I've been wanting to ask this question, and somebody in the chat asked it as well. What's your take on the four-dot cross?
Of course you can. Maybe first in general, and then I'll come back to Malta. So the four-dot cross, I mean, if you research Oak Island, I mean, you can have a very, very short research life because there's very little to go by, right? So there's a four-dot cross, a dot in a circle, an age, and then a lot of dates, and then an unoverseeable amount of speculation of all sorts. 90-foot stone, did it ever exist? Probably. What was written on it? We don't know. I mean, contrary to popular belief, we research based on facts, which means that we need to sometimes dismiss these things, just like everybody else, because we're just not sure that the damn thing even existed. But the four-dot cross was there. Now this seems a very inconspicuous symbol, simple square cross with four dots.
Right.
Truth is, at least in Europe, it's quite rare. You rarely see this in a church or on an altar, or I mean, there's all sorts of variation, but a pure square cross with four dots is, in my mind, a rare thing. I've been visiting churches since I was a kipper. You don't see those very often.
Right.
Hardly ever.
Wow.
And fact is that in the locations that we know, there were Knights Templar, you do see these. So I have very little doubt that I'm sure the Knights Templar didn't uniquely use this, but they did use it, and they used it in funerary situations on their tombstones. In northern Spain, in Portugal, in Italy, in Belgium, in France. I can tell you 15 examples of Templar tombstones that have four-dot crosses.
Wow.
If you found them on walls or in altars, it was always in properties or churches of the Knights Templar. So I think that is a strong connection. It's a strong connection. It can mean different things. In Italy, they told us, like you say, that it was an indication for relics nearby. There was one scene that we filmed in Viterbo, which never aired. I think in the early 1900s, they were renovating the cathedral in Viterbo, and they found a silk cloth and a jawbone under the floor, which was indicated by a four-dot cross. This turned out to be the perceived jaw of John the Baptist.
Wow.
Which is interesting because in Amiens they have the skull of John the Baptist, without the jaw. At the same time, I think there's at least 5 places that claim that they have the skull or the jaw of John the Baptist. But fact is, it had been brought there either by Philip de Villiers at the time or by the Templars earlier.
Wow.
And hidden under the floor. And still today, the commemorative plaque, the marble plaque that describes this, has the four-dot cross there. So this was something that we learned in Italy. It's a shame they never aired that. In Portugal, we talked to there's in the city of Tomar, where you have the Convent of Christ, where we filmed for season 9.
Yep.
You have an old synagogue. It's one of the oldest synagogues in Portugal. It's a beautiful, beautiful place, and we talked to the rabbi there, and he told us that the four-dot cross would be used by Jews in the Middle Ages as a substitute symbol for the menorah, and we wrote this down in the Jerusalem files.
Yep. I remember that now. Yep.
The Jews would have a menorah as their, unification symbol, but showing it, could make them suspect for arrest or, even worse. So they would use this four-dot cross, and if you drew a few lines, it could become sort of a menorah, which was a funny story that I didn't know. It's another thing that you need to go out to hear these things. So I think there's a relation between the Four-Dot Cross, and the Knights Templar. When we went to Malta, we couldn't find one. So we've been running around. I've been on Malta many times, but also during the research trips, we looked for them. And we in official places, we didn't find them. And if you look at the Co-Cathedral of St. John, there's 400 tombstones in beautiful marble across the entire floor. It's just one of the amazing views in Christianity, I guess. Same for the Cathedral of St. Paul in Medina. Has the same marble floor. Look up a photo of the Cathedral of St. John in Valletta. You don't know what it's just absolutely breathtaking.
I actually
you have every symbol there that you can shake a stick at, but there's no Four-Dot Cross. Nowhere to. The only place that we found one or two. One was in the old prison on Gozo, and I stood there. Judy stood there. I mean, we saw a Four-Dot Cross on the wall. I swear I did, and I have my own photos of it. I don't know what production did, but maybe not a very good editing job. But I'm not sure that is the place that I've seen it. So there was a Four-Dot Cross in the old prison, scratched into the wall by a Knight of Malta who was imprisoned there, which must have been after 1530. Which to me, I mean, you can then hypothesize that the use of the Four-Dot Cross, was in fashion by the Knights Templar as well as by the Knights Hospitaller. They did this in the Middle Ages, so we have examples from 1100, from the 1200s, and now we have an example from the 1500s. Hey, that's interesting, because we have another one on Oak Island, which we found in the 1930s, or what was it, 1980? I don't know. We don't know how old that was. Could be from yesterday, or could be 400 years old. It's very hard to tell.
Mm-hmm. Yep, and then we have that Four-Dot Cross. It was on what they're calling the HO stone. It was blown up on Oak Island. So is that a coincidence? No, it's not a coincidence that this thing is all over the place. And then knowing, like how you just explained, thank you for that, by the way, because that's always been a mystery to me. But as Judy said, that John the Baptist was revered by both the Knights Templar and the Knights of Malta. So okay, so but that 8, why there was 8 on that particular one, I don't know. And I know we're coming up on time here because it's very, very late there where you are.
Yes, it's 1:30 a.m. here.
Yeah, and we got to get moving here because I don't want to keep you up. So one last thing about the prison. It was brought up here talking about all those scratchings on the prison. I was a little confused watching the show. They talked about there was knights actually held in the prison. If the Knights of Malta were setting up the fortifications to protect themselves from the Ottoman, a siege by the Ottomans, why would there be Knights of Malta in the prisons? What was I couldn't put that together. What was that exactly? There was knights in the prison.
Yeah, there was. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, there was.
And they did all these scratches on the wall.
In the prison of the Knights of Malta, in the citadel of the Knights of Malta. I think the most famous example is Jean de Valette, who gave his name to Valletta, who was one of the illustrious and really famous commanders sometime after Philippe de Villiers. He got into an argument, was drunk and obnoxious, and basically was imprisoned for insubordination.
Okay.
So they had a very strict penal system, and their own sort of internal police force to make sure everybody would behave, because there was a lot of men on a small island.
Right. That makes sense. Okay, thank you for explaining that. I was a little confused. I was why would they be in prison when it was them that built all this stuff, or rebuilt?
Well, you could end up in a prison that you built yourself. Mind you, and this is something that the order will tell you. The Knights didn't build. I mean, they were architects, they were project managers, they were producers, but
Right.
these were noblemen. They didn't
Right.
work.
Right. Yep.
They fought. They would strategize. They in battle they were fierce, but they wouldn't pick up an axe and dig a tunnel. There were other people doing that.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, makes sense. Okay, like I said, I know we're up on time. Is there anything else you'd like to share with us before we go about your trip and the family ties and all of this over in the Knights of Malta? Does that pretty much wrap it up for us?
Yeah, I think it does. Yeah, I think
Okay.
again, it's been a yeah, let's not life, but mind changing research for me.
Okay.
So, and it opens up a number of avenues. It closes a number of discussions,
Mhm.
which is nice. I mean, the discussion about who was on Oak Island. Was it a Viking, a Knight Templar, a Hospitaller, a Rosicrucian, a king, a peasant, an admiral? Doesn't really matter. Um,
Mhm.
People did this, and at the same time, they would have been, a member of an order or of the tennis club
Yeah.
or something else. I sometimes think, we look at this story from the wrong angle, and putting the family perspective in there changes the whole thing 180
Sure
degrees
does.
around,
Sure
and
does.
certain perceptions or certain assumptions become a lot more logical when you imagine that this would be a concerted effort by a family.
Yep, absolutely. Well, I know we mentioned this at the beginning of the show that Corjan is a co-author of this book right here, The Jerusalem Files, with Christopher Morford. And I have to ask one last question. Now that you've got more information, is there going to be a book two coming or a follow-up to this?
If we ever find the time, we we could write. I think we have research. I think for at least 2 or 3 books.
Wow. Wow. That's great.
Yeah, I mean, this family thing could be a book. I don't know. Yeah.
Oh
Who
man,
knows?
can't wait. Can't wait. All right. Well, thank you very much, Corian. I appreciate it immensely. Like I
Thank you
said
so much.
earlier today, this door is always open to you to come on and share research with us because it's an education for me. And I like to share that education with everyone that wants to come and watch this show and this podcast because that's how I do my research by offering you guys to come on and explain. And it's every time I feel like a student sitting in a classroom. So thank you very much for that. I appreciate it.
Well, thank you, and thank Linda, and thank everybody you work with. I mean, I'm nothing without a platform. So, and I'm
Right.
immensely grateful to everyone who takes the time and puts in the trouble to read our book, or to watch the show and hear me ramble, and it's humbling. So thank you so much for giving me a voice and sharing this with all of you. So deeply indebted to all of you, and thank you for being there, so I can do my hobby. I guess that's it.
Well,
Yeah,
it's a great hobby, and we appreciate it. And that lady there, one of these
yeah.
days, I'd like to convince her to come on
Yeah,
too.
and
So
one last thing to it. I mean, I sometimes see people. Hey, you are on, but these are paid holidays and stuff. Lovely people. I pay all my trips myself. I do my own research. I go there because I want to, and if it's meaningful and worth it, I bring it back to the research team, and we foster it together and make it into something great. And if you're at work with the Oak Island team in a European location, it is anything but holiday. These are incredibly long and incredibly. Look at the eyes of Rick at the beginning of a trip and at the end. I mean, we
yes,
are wasted at the end.
I noticed that. I did catch that
It's
very.
incredibly intense. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you very much, sir. Folks, thank you for being here with us tonight. I hope you learned as much as I did tonight. This has been fantastic, and we really appreciate you all tuning in. If you like the content of the show we did here for you tonight, please consider giving us a thumbs up. And if you haven't already, consider subscribing to the channel. That really helps us out a lot with all the YouTube stuff and everything going on there. So, with that, Corey and Mole, thank you again very much. Appreciate it. Linda, thank you for doing your moderation work. I know it's a tough job, but I appreciate you doing it. And with that, we're going to say goodnight from the J Free 906 podcast. Good night, everyone.
Okay. Thanks, everyone. Take care.